Hello, everyone. I'm Lawrence Heath-Moore, welcoming you to another edition of Talking NW Synod, our monthly podcast. You've just been listening to the dulcet sounds of Leo Roberts playing the guitar. Leo is my guest this afternoon. He's the Synod's Children and Youth Development Officer, or SIDO. But today we'll be talking about his other life as a singer-songwriter. Leo, folks, is the real deal. He goes to sleep every night with a pen and pad by his bedside. Welcome, Leo.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. Lovely to be here.
Great. So tell me, how often have you been inspired to wake up in the middle of the night and write a song?
Very rarely that I've been inspired to write a song, but what I do find is that I can be just drifting off to sleep and a particular lyric comes to me and I thought, that would make a good basis, or I could use that for something. And of course, if you don't write it down, then you've lost it by the time you wake up in the morning, like so many dreams. The really worrying thing is when music comes to me, because I can't read music and therefore I can't write music. So if a good tune comes into my head, there are two options. One is to nip downstairs and record it on a guitar in front of my computer at 3 o'clock in the morning, or just accept that it's lost and gone forever and somebody else can have it free of charge.
And have you done that? Nip down at 3 o'clock?
Yes, I have. Fortunately, my wife is a very heavy sleeper and so is my next door neighbour. So quids in.
That's great. So you've been writing songs and singing them since you were about 10, did you say?
Yeah, since I was very young. Music was quite big in my family growing up. My mum and dad both played the piano and we had a piano. And whilst my brothers and sisters and I were never actively encouraged to learn an instrument, if we said that we wanted to try, then we were given every opportunity and lessons would be arranged and so on and so forth. I started learning the guitar when I was 12, and in good Liverpool fashion, I was taught by a nun. And it's all very well playing other people's music, but when you getting a bit older and you're a teenager, you've got all that teenage angst. You know, people that you love who you wouldn't dream of speaking to because they're so far beyond you. And you have two options, really. One is to die of shame and one is to write a song about it. So I would write songs. Which is only a poem set to music. So,
I want to ask you about the number of instruments you now own. I have a friend who is a cyclist, and the formula for the ideal number of bikes is X plus 1, where X is the number currently owned. Is that the same for you as far as musical instruments go?
It is, as far as I'm concerned. X minus 1 is the formula as far as my wife is concerned. I do have lots and lots of instruments, and I've been really very lucky. My first proper guitar, if I can call it proper guitar, was bought for me in 1978, and it wasn't bought for me. I took a loan out of my mum and dad to buy it. It's a Guild D40, which is an American guitar. And I did that. I got that when I was in lower sixth, and I bought it from Frank Hesse Limited in Liverpool, which is where the Beatles got their guitar. So it was always very special. And that went with me everywhere I went, all the way through university, playing and performing at folk clubs in university while I was at university, sort of helped keep my bank balance vaguely sane during that time. But then there was an itch, and I started some of my favourite artists. I started noticing that they sometimes had more than one guitar. Damn it, if they could, why couldn't I? So,
okay, I've got a list. You've got 16 guitars, 2 ukuleles, 2 banjos, one with 4 strings and one with 5. You've got a quattro, which you've brought in today, a mandolin, a cigar box guitar, 2 bouzoukis, and a banjolele. Is that about it?
More or less, yes.
Tell me something about those different instruments. I mean, we always think of George Formby with the ukulele.
Yeah, well, George Formby didn't play the ukulele. He played a banjolele. And when he was starting out, sort of in the 20s and 30s, particularly in the 40s when he was becoming really popular, just playing the ukulele will not cut through the sound of a big band. behind you. So all the clever stuff that he was doing was getting lost. So if you want to play with an orchestra, you've got to have a ukulele that's got a big sound. And so what lots of people did was that they put a banjo hoop onto a ukulele body, and that increases the volume of a ukulele by about 5 times, and you can then be heard. And George Formby really made it his own instrument. There's lots of other banjolele players as well, but George Formby, who was the highest paid entertainer of his day, as well as a really good campaigner against apartheid and stuff like that people forget about, he really brought the banjolele into prominence.
And a quattro. Now you've got a quattro, and it's 4 strings.
Yeah.
What else makes it different from a normal guitar?
Well, the quattro isn't a guitar. The quattro is, as you rightly say, a 4-string instrument, and they all hark back to when Portugal wanted to rule the world. And they went out on their expeditions, and the sailors, of course, took their musical instruments with them. And the musical instrument they mostly took was a local Mediterranean instrument called a kitara, which is 4 strings. But obviously, wherever they landed and they settled, then that musical instrument would stay there when they moved on, and the locals would tend to adapt it to their own uses and for their own preference. So in Hawaii, the kitara became the ukulele that we now know and love. And further south into South America, the kitara became a quattro.
Leo, tell me about your finger-picking style.
My absolute guitar hero is a guy called Ralph Mattel, which people will know through streets of London, but he is so much more than that. Now, he's called Ralph Mattel after a ragtime guitarist called Blind Willie McTell. His real name is Ralph May. And I think it's true that you follow your idols. So I very much play in the style of Ralph McTell. Not that I'm going to call myself Leo McTell, but to give you for an example, there are a number of ways of playing. There's claw hammer guitar, which would be sort of the bum ching. And then, of course, the strum. And then there's finger picking. And it's all about allowing your fingers to do the work and to play the sympathetic notes. Very often you find that people that are finger picking guitars pick the melody, as I did there. But finger picking also allows you to play around the melody, the harmony notes that if somebody was singing along with, they would sing the harmony, and the finger picking allows you to play those single notes that provide the harmony, which then gives depth to the performance and allows the listener to hear more of what is going on.
Yeah.
But it used to be said that a group of protest singers in Greenwich Village in the 1970s were all together, and they said that, I've forgotten who, the people famous, but they said something along the lines of, it was funny, when we were young, we used to sit in bars and talk about changing the world. Now we sit in cafes and talk about how we look after our nails. And fingernails are an incredibly important part. And my nightmare is that I've been asked to do something musically and I break a nail.
Right.
Because that means I won't be able to play the guitar as well as I would like to. I would have to cut all my other nails down so that they're all the same length. And a fleshy, for me, using the pads of your fingers doesn't get you as much resonance as using a nail. You get a much sharper, cleaner sound.
So let's talk, Leo, about the process of writing a song. How does that work for you?
There are 2 ways it works. One is I'm inspired to write a song, and 2 is somebody asks me to write a song. And they both start off pretty much the same way, in that there is an idea, an idea that somebody thinks, either me or somebody else, would be well represented by in a musical form. And for me, the lyrics always come first. As I said before, I don't read music, so I find that really difficult, and I really enjoy stealing other people's music for the songs that I write for my own pleasure. But when I'm asked to write something that is going to go wider than just me and my circle of friends, then I have to come up with my own tunes. But it is the lyrics that come first. If I'm asked to write a song, I will ask initially, who is the target audience? Is it young people? Is it children? Is it adults? What is the theme? Is there a particular thing that you want to say, something that you need emphasized in the song? And then I'll start working on that, do some research, and then try and pick out lyrics that I think within that would work with both the theme and the rhyme. If the rhyme works, that's great. If the rhyme doesn't work, then I try and find out a way that I can put the important word somewhere else into the lyric where it doesn't need to rhyme but can still exist. And one of the problems with sort of hymns and God songs is that so many of the good rhymes have already been taken. And if you look at the word Lord, where you've got words like afford, sadly you've got words like bored, roared, and then you would think you can have chord, but of course that's been taken, you know. I heard there was a secret chord David played and he pleased the Lord, but so you can't use that anymore because I'm afraid Leonard Cohen's done it.
How long does it take you to write a song?
Yeah, it is. That is a question of, you know, how long is a piece of string. Sometimes things come very, very quickly. Or it's almost, I'm not saying Holy Spirit led, anything like that, because it happens with all the songs I write, many of which are not suitable and certainly not Holy Spirit led. I can finish a song in 10 minutes if the lyrics just work, then they just work. But equally, and it's very often the songs that I've asked to write for somebody else because the idea isn't my own. They can take weeks or months sometimes to get right. And the real difficulty with that, of course, is that somebody's asked you to write a song, and that means there is a deadline because they need that song for a piece of work or to be published at some stage. So you can write what you think are perfectly adequate lyrics, and then 3 weeks later you can think, I could have done that, by which time it's too late to do anything with. And then you're left where you are with what you've done. But it's very much the law of diminishing returns. If it takes you 2 hours to write a song and it's good enough, then taking 4 hours to write it won't make it twice as good.
We're going to listen to the first of one of the songs that you've written. It's a children's song. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yes, I will. I'll tell you about it. It's going to be pre-recorded. It was a song that I was asked to write by the Children and Youth Work Office for our holiday club material a couple of years ago on the theme of heroes and villains. And I have to say, I'm very proud of it. I'm proud of it for a number of reasons. I find writing for children actually much harder than writing for any other age group, because there are certain rules that I have. The first is that it's got to be fairly obvious what the song is about. It's got to be easy to sing so that there are no big words, there are no difficult concepts. It's got to be enjoyable to sing, I hope. And lastly, because I hope that not everybody will just use my recording, because I'm not gifted with I'm gifted with a loud voice, but not necessarily a great voice. I would hope that in churches, in holiday clubs, they would have people themselves that play music. So I try and make them fairly simple to play, sort of 3 or 4 chords as an absolute maximum. It's a song called You Don't Need a Cape to Be a Hero, because in the chorus itself, it sums up everything I think works really well for children's songs. So you've got the first line, you don't need a cape to be a hero, which is the theme of ordinary people can do extraordinary things for God.
Right.
You know, you don't need to be brilliant. But then the second thing is children always like something just a little bit naughty, a little bit that will give them a bit of a giggle. And the parents, it's the adults, we sang this, da, 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 da. So I got that line in there as well. And then there's something about faith that reminds them why they're there. There's an action that they are required to do, not an action song, but a way to live their life that is required to do. And then finally, just to re-emphasize what it is again. So if I play the chorus, but the whole song will be after it. Oh, you don't need a cape to be a hero, or wear your underpants over your tights. Just keep on doing good, like Jesus says we should. You don't need a cape to be a hero.
That's great.
A hero is somebody who stops things being bad. A villain is the opposite, and that is really sad. So listen to me now, and I will show you how. You don't need a cape to be a hero. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero, or wear your underpants over your tights. Just try to do some good, 'cause Jesus thinks you should. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero. You don't need to fly to be a hero. Your feet, they can't stay firmly on the ground. You can't fly like a bird, 'cause that would be absurd. You don't need to fly to be a hero. You don't need a cape to be a hero, or wear your underpants over your tights. Just try to do some good, 'cause Jesus thinks you should. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero. And you don't need a mask to be a hero. It doesn't matter, folk know who you are. To undertake the task, you don't need to wear a mask. You don't need a mask to be a hero. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero, or wear your underpants over your tights. Just try to do some good, 'cause Jesus thinks you should. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero. You don't need special clothes to be a hero. Just wear the clothes that you wear every day. I'm telling you the truth, you are not bulletproof. You don't need special clothes to be a hero. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero, or wear your underpants over your tights. Just try to do some good, 'cause Jesus thinks you should. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero. You don't need superpowers to be a hero, for God has made you perfect as you are. And I don't think you ought to try to breathe while underwater, 'cause you don't need superpowers to be a hero. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero, or wear your underpants over your tights. Just try to do some good, 'cause Jesus thinks you should. No, you don't need a cape to be a hero. You don't need a cape to be a hero. You don't need a cape to be a hero.
The giggly bit was the underpants, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Let's talk for a couple of minutes then about how your music and your songwriting connects with your faith, Leo.
I think faith for me is something that is incredibly personal. And whilst I enjoy collective worship, whilst I enjoy being part of a wider throng and, the communion of the saints and all that sort of stuff, for me, the important thing about what I do work-wise as the Children and Youth Development Officer for the Synod is about providing opportunities and creating ways for children and young people to develop their own personal relationship with God. And I think if they have a relationship that is theirs rather than a relationship that the junior church leader tells them ought to be the sort of relationship they have, or I say, this is my relationship with God. Why don't you have the same sort of relationship? I don't think that benefits anybody. I think children and young people need to have their own relationship and recognize that relationship will develop and grow and diminish and regrow in the same way as all relationships do over the course of a lifetime. And relationships are all about emotion. If we think of the relationships, we talk about relationship emotions, love, hate, indifference. It's all about emotion. And I think music is a fantastic way of encouraging people to explore and express their emotions. And for me, of course, as somebody who pretends to be a singer-songwriter, actually writing songs allows me, much as 14-year-old me did in my teenage angst, it allows me to express my emotions about what's going on in my life and how God is or isn't helping me.
I go to an online church, so you can't sing in unison on Zoom. It's just a nightmare. So we mute everybody, and we'll say to people, feel free to mute yourself and sing it to your heart's content as loudly as you wish, or simply engage with the music. But it also means that we're not instinctively choosing hymns. We can use anything.
We've had the benefit of technology has helped us in that, we have now YouTube, and very often in our churches, we can have projection screens. So we can we're no longer hidebound by what is in the hymn book.
Yeah.
But we still struggle to take that major step, which is choosing what is undoubtedly a secular song to make a faithful point. There's a song by Billy Joel called All About Soul, which could easily be about the Holy Spirit. There's nothing there that the Holy Spirit doesn't do. So I think we still have some way to go in allowing our congregations to experience music that would surprise them. And I think that's one of the real benefits of things like your church. There are two artists who I really, really enjoy at the moment. One is a band from Wigan called Merry Hell, and the other is a solo acoustic singer called Grace Petrie, who's on a Greenbelt this year. And they both write fantastic songs about life and experience and what to do about it. They produce songs that are bang full of worshipful ideas that ask the questions. And I think that's I hope is what you're saying when you say we can't have people singing along because the technology doesn't allow that, which means sometimes you're invited to focus on the words, and songs can ask as many questions as they provide answers.
Leo, finally, as we come to the end of this conversation, and if I were to choose one hymn that expresses much of what I believe and hope for in faith, it would be the hymn, God is Love, Let Heaven Adore Him. And if I had to choose a song, whether it's a Christian song, overtly religious song or not, that would express what for me is vital about faith, I think it's probably my idea of the most Christian song around, and it's written by Leonard Cohen, and it's called Anthem, and it's got those lines, ring the bells that still can ring, forget your perfect offering, there is a crack in everything.
Where the light comes
That's
in.
how the light gets in. Absolutely. So, a hymn and a song, what's it going to be?
A hymn for me, and it's one that I love singing because I find it very, very reflective. I love the tune. I love the way that the tune encourages me to be emotional. And that would be my song is Love Unknown. which is not a modern hymn by any stretch of the imagination,
No.
but just moves me in a way that I sometimes forget that hymns can. And I very often pick it if I'm leading worship, because I hope it will enable others to feel moved in the same way as I do. With regards to songs, there are so many. It is really difficult to pick one. But I think if I were to be forced to, and listener Lawrence does have a knife to my throat at the moment, I would say it's a song by Billy Joel called Scenes from an Italian Restaurant. And I love it for a number of reasons. The first one is that it's a coming-of-age song. It's a song about the transition from being a teenager to an adult and all that is involved in that. And secondly, it follows three specific genres of music. So 3 very different types of musicality in one, perhaps 4.5-minute song. So you are always kept interested and you are always able to put yourself somewhere. And Billy Joel is a highly underrated lyricist.
I agree with you about that. Well, thank you so much for your time. We're going to play out with a more meditative song that you've written. Can you just tell us what it's called and why you wrote it?
Yes, this is a song called God of Mine, and I was again asked to write this by the Children and Youth Work Office of the United Reformed Church for a resource that we were putting out, recognizing it was written during the pandemic when we were looking at young people and children were either going back to school or not going back to school, and all those major changes that had gone on in their lives as a result of the pandemic. And the brief was to emphasize that while all things change, God stays firm and resolute and with you. So the lining rhyme is God of the online, God of the real world, God of mine.
Leo, thank you for your time. We wish you well in all your singing and songwriting, and blessings in the ministry that's also part of that life of yours. And so we finish today as we listen to God of Mine.
We know times they are a-changing, and the differences are ranging from a new school to a grey hair, to a planet laid to waste. When I need to feel you near me, you say I am here, don't fear me. God of the real world, God of the online, God of mine. Day becomes the night before the sun rises once more. Winter turns to spring before the summer turns to fall. Time cannot stand still, so nothing ever stays the same. But God of the real world, God of the online, God of mine. Like a song must have a chorus, we need you to go before us, always leading and cajoling as we walk the way ahead. You are right there when we need you, saying, follow, I will lead you. God of the real world, God of the online, God of mine. Day becomes the night before the sun rises once more. Winter turns to spring before the summer turns to fall. Time cannot stand still, so nothing ever stays the same. But God of the real world, God of the online, God of mine. There are times when we feel lost, and it's heavy waves that cross, as we struggle to continue in your footsteps down the path. We are hungry and we need you. You say, come and I will feed you. God of the real world, God of the online, God of mine. Day becomes the night before the sun rises once more. Winter turns to spring before the summer turns to fall. Time cannot stand still, so nothing ever stays the same. But God of the real world, God of the online, God of mine. Time cannot stand still, so nothing ever stays the same. But God of the real world, God of the online, God of mine.